you don't mind, I want to jump into a different film, which is Thor. You will not remember this, but I was actually on set 10 years ago when you were making it. And I remember standing next to Tom Hiddleston in costume, not knowing who he was, and seeing everything, and, Mjolnir, losing my mind as a Marvel fan. I'm just curious, back then, what a lot of people don't realize is that was when Marvel was still releasing movies with Paramount, that they had taken out this big loan, and if these movies were not successful, all the characters were going to revert to the bank. So I'm curious, what was it like making a movie like that, where literally the studio either exists because of this movie or it's dead? These movies have to work.
Well, what I have to take my hat off to Marvel for was that as a filmmaker, you were not made aware of that in a way that got stopped you being creative. But there was no question that tonally, Thor was critical after the massive success of the brilliant Iron Man from Mr. Favreau and Robert, and then the slightly less successful for them in their terms of that Hulk. Thor became critical to being the sort of tonal bridge, featuring literally a rainbow bridge as well, between, as it were, the earthbound and spacebound and fantasy-bound parts of the Marvel universe. So there was a kind of, connective matrix that Thor, Asgard, the Nine Realms, and everything that it involved could provide inside that large Marvel Cinematic Universe that was really enormously important, that couldn't be done by the brilliant, Captain America, because it wasn't the same material. This was the one that said, is there a fantastical future? So I knew about it, and I felt that it was as important as that, but also I knew that I could only do the best job that I could do. And I do think that Kevin Feige, Louis D'Esposito, Victoria Alonso, they kept a steady hand. They played a great poker game, and God was in the details. It was very, very detailed. And then they trusted me, and they collaborated on the things that I could be useful with, and they were also critically aware that, and I'll never forget the moment that we cast those two boys. It was like a kind of meditation or a sort of incantation. It was Craig Kyle and Kevin Feige and me in a room at Marvel Studios, at Raleigh Studios down in Manhattan Beach, and Kevin Feige must have walked around this long oval table 100 times on that Saturday morning, as I kept sort of saying, I think we should call them. Are you sure? Yeah, I think we should call them. Well, who are you going to call first? I said, I think we've got to call Chris Hemsworth. Well, where is he? He's in Vancouver. He's doing Cabin in the Woods for Joss Whedon. Remember, Joss says he's terrific. I trust Joss. What about the other guy? Got to call him immediately. And then making those calls. And I knew how profoundly serious that decision was. Kevin said, we'll never make a more important decision in this company than what's happening in this room Saturday morning at 10:30. When you pick up the phone to Chris Hemsworth and then Tom Hiddleston, it's either going to work or it's not. Good luck.
First of all, that's an amazing story that I have not heard. Thank you so much for sharing it. And I've wondered this entire time, but one of the things I really wanted to bring up with you was casting Chris, because he and Tom, because these two men have become synonymous with the Marvel Universe. And do they still send you thank you cards? Because I think that's kind of important.
I tell you what, I sent a well done card to Chris the other week for Extraction, in which I thought he was excellent. It was brilliantly done, always around that. And of course, I keep up with Tom. I've worked with Tom in the theater. So I keep up with the pair of them. When Chris was here the last time he was filming, he was down at the house with the family. No, we keep up a lot, and they've become good friends. I think they see me as old crusty professor, kind of older advisor occasionally. They're both terrific guys. I'm so fond of them. I think they just did a wonderful job. And as you were standing next to them, I mean, I just didn't know how much it would change their lives, but it did, and I'm glad it did, and it changed mine too.
If you don't mind, one more
thing about that actually is that a critical individual in that process, unquestionably, is the head of casting at Disney and now Fox, Randy Hiller. Sarah Halley Finn, also a brilliant casting director, part of that process. But knowing that Chris, who'd come in at the beginning of the process and was not at his best, could and should come back, was Randy Hiller. So I think that both Tom and Chris owe Randy a few cards, and Sarah as well, over the years too.
Are you a bit surprised? You were at the beginning of this superhero mega event that has now taken over the planet. The superhero genre is the most popular genre on the planet nowadays. It's been just building and building. Are you a bit surprised that after 10 years, there's no sign of it slowing down?
Kevin was asked back then, when I joined the Marvel Universe, Kevin was being asked all the time, do you think people will soon get tired of superhero movies? So that question was there back then. And the answer, I think, is no, not if they are good.
Sure. Did you ever think, part of my last question on Thor, I have other things I wanted to ask you about, but did you ever contemplate doing another Marvel movie? Or doing another superhero movie, or did you sort of get your fix, if you will, with Thor? I've always wondered.
The way things worked, there was a version of events where if sort of sometimes with these stories, I like to plan them as trilogies, but it's much harder in this world for that to work out because the stakes are so high. You've got to really see how the first one does. When the first one was finished, essentially it had been 3 years of my life, 3 fantastic years of my life, but I needed to recharge on something else. I was too close to the glass on that one. So I would definitely never say never again, because as I say, it changed my life, it changed my career, and I'm profoundly grateful for it. I wasn't ready to go straight into another one, but I like the idea of, I'd love to be planning something that was a 3-parter, in movie terms. And that hasn't come along yet, but maybe it will.